age is not a limit to success. And I feel like people put so many different limitations on themselves. And that could be part of where the doubt stems from. Like maybe it's a lack of belief in themselves because they are pursuing this big goal and they don't know how to get there, or they're looking at past mistakes and they're willing to say, I want something different for myself. I want this big goal, but they still have some doubt.
Welcome to the Raw and Real podcast. Are you dreaming of changing your life through opening a business? Or are you curious what obstacles entrepreneurs had to overcome on their journey? Then you're in the right place. My name is Agnes and I'm your host. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Raw and Real. Today's guest on the show is Marc Guberti. Marc is a USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestselling author with over 100,000 students in over 180 countries enrolled in his online courses. He hosts 3 podcasts and several evergreen virtual summits where he teaches people how to grow their businesses and achieve personal transformation. He coaches authors, speakers, coaches, and business owners on how they can attract more traffic to their content and boost revenue. Hey, Marc, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Hey, I'm really curious to get to know more about your entrepreneurial journey because I know that you started at a very young age when you were still in school. So can you share a little bit about your background and how you actually got started?
So entrepreneurship for me really started as a hobby. I'm a Boston Red Sox fan in New York. Those two things never really mix well, but you do find some of your comrades from time to time. And that blog didn't really go too far just because I was taking it like a hobby, but it introduced me to writing blog posts, to promoting my content. And that allowed me to eventually enter through starting a whole bunch of blogs, just a bunch of different hobbies and side passions that I didn't take seriously, but again, it was just a fun activity for me. It allowed me to eventually expand into content marketing because I fell in love with the numbers. I fell in love with digging through your data to see what works and what doesn't, being able to provide those insights to your audience. So that's pretty much the origin story of how I got started. And then when you go down the content marketing rabbit hole, you hear about things like training courses and podcasts and the importance of having all of those different things. And I was very excited to jump into all these different areas very early on. So part of the reason why I've been able to jump into so many different areas in the digital marketing space.
So how was it with blogging? Because it started out as a hobby for you. When did you really see the opportunity to monetize it or really, become more business-minded?
So it took me a while because, again, it just started as a hobby. I was happy to write about stuff that I could choose what to write about. I could cover whatever topic I wanted to cover. That felt I really liked that setup and I still like it to this day. But then you get curious, like, people actually make money on this because you see people put their heart and soul into it and you see ads running. You're like, there's got to be something here. So I Googled, the make money from blogging, the make money online, the stuff that everyone Googles when they're a little new to the game. And sometimes even when you're more advanced, just to learn a thing or two you might have missed. So I see that people are making 6 figures from blogging. I'm like, if it's possible for anybody to make 6 figures for blogging, it's possible for me. It's possible for anybody to follow a model of success that's already been proven to work. So then I saw that it's possible, but at the same time, I didn't feel like blogging about the Red Sox was the way I wanted to. Like, it's one of those things where you pursue something because it's a hobby, but you want it to just stay as a hobby. You don't want it to be your profession. You don't want it to be the thing that everyone knows you for, but you love it as a hobby. Like, I still root for the Boston Red Sox, but I don't want to go deep into the data. But once I saw it was possible, I started to think, where do I want to make my money? Like, what's the topic I want to talk about? So I wrote a whole bunch of blogs about so many different passions. When I was gaining momentum on some of them, I was like, that's the thing that I want to learn how to do. I want to help people who maybe they have a blog, they want to get more momentum on it. And I'll start talking about content marketing and how people can grow and become successful in that area.
And how did you really get into YouTube?
YouTube was one of those things where once I went into blogging, like I tried to go into everything. Like I created a Twitter account to promote the blog posts. My first tweet's actually really terrible because I had no idea how to use Twitter. Every social network I went into, like, let's promote the blog. And that's like the reason I went into YouTube as well, just to promote my existing content. So YouTube was more of let's drive traffic to these other places rather than take YouTube seriously, at least for a while. And some of my early videos, I talk about Lego sets a lot because it's one of those hobbies I had that I had a blog about Legos at the time. I wanted to grow it. But as I got into it more and more, I was like, that's not the profession I want to be known for. Like, I want to keep it as a hobby. So I had that going on at the beginning where I talk about hobbies and be like, is that really the thing I want to be known for? And switch course. And I had success in growing. So I was like, let me just make that my focus. That's pretty much how I got into YouTube. It wasn't all Legos. It was more like sometimes I talk about how to grow on Twitter. Sometimes I talk about Yu-Gi-Oh cards because that was another thing I did. Sometimes I talk about Legos. So my channel was pretty all over the place. And then I settled on a mix of digital marketing and more recently investing.
So how did you really find your niche? Was it that you just experimented with different topics and then in the end you saw kind of what hit? And then in the end you decided to take those old videos and like unlist them in order to keep your authority?
I just always looked at the data. Like if I'm creating a video and no one's really engaging with it, like what am I doing? Like as a content creator, you want to create content that you enjoy creating, but also that people engage with, because then you're just speaking to yourself, in which, you know, it's a hobby. You want to make that jump. Now, I do believe like no matter what brand you pursue, you could definitely grow it. But, you know, there are just some topics that didn't necessarily work for me, given like, you know, my level of commitment towards them and how I viewed each topic as hobby versus something I want to take seriously. I always, from early on, looked at the data relentlessly. If the data told me to do something, I usually did it, as long as it was something that I felt like I would enjoy doing and the audience would enjoy as well. But I do feel like you look at your data, you think from a numbers perspective, and you can see a lot of opportunities maybe you would have overlooked.
And I know that you also monetize your YouTube channel through your personal courses that you created, where you have your description below the video and there you have links to the relevant courses, right? So I'm curious, when was a point that you really got traction and you saw your first subscriptions for these courses, and how did you even come up with the idea to create them in the first place?
So the reason I created the courses was just as more people engaged with my blog posts, I had an idea of what content worked the most. So Twitter is like my biggest following of a platform. Definitely not what it used to be, but it's still a relatively good platform for my business. And a lot of people back then in like the mid 2010s, they enjoyed my Twitter content, how to grow your Twitter audience, how to get more retweets, how to use Twitter to turn your followers into customers. They enjoyed that stuff the most. So that's why my very first Udemy course was Twitter domination. I always created courses based on what people enjoyed the most, and then I would include those in the description of my YouTube video. So that's why now that investing is the main focus on the channel, I have my stock market and money mastery course, which is something that I put in the description of all my videos for people who want to, like, they watch the video, they're interested, they want to learn more, and they decide to check out that course because they're just curious about what could be inside of it. I always base all my decisions on how the audience engages with my content, and it has helped me with creating the courses I've created. I do tend to create a lot of short courses just because I don't want to spend 10 hours creating a course and then it doesn't make any sales. I create like a short 1 hour course. If it gains traction, I add more content to it and make that like one of my courses that I promote the most. But again, the more data oriented you are, the easier it is to spot good opportunities.
So let's say when you're starting a new course, right? And you see a lot of people engage with your stock videos. Is it then that you create like 1 hour of content around that topic, you put it out as a course, and then I guess you price it not too high in the beginning to check out how it goes? And then later on, do you add more material and increase the price as well? Or how do you do that?
It definitely varies for each course. What I'm trying to do now is I want to keep a very low price point. Like my stock market money mastery course is $20. That's like, there's no like, oh, like $100 upsell, $500 up. I'm not doing it for that particular course just because I feel like it's better for the structure. Just I prefer not to have it set up that way. Just one time payment, $20. And for that, I mean, anything can change. Like I could decide to raise the price to 50, whatever. But right now I really like the $20 price spot and just add more content to it. A lot of people have gotten into the course. They say they enjoy it. So it's just something that I'm very happy with how it's doing right now. And just to raise the price when it may not be necessary, I'd rather keep it where it is at this stage.
Okay, so do you ever raise your prices after you put out one of these courses?
So on Udemy, I usually do, but that's because Udemy, all my courses are $200. But if you know anything about Udemy or you've gone to buy stuff, no one buys it at $200. They only buy it like $10. So like you kind of have to position it that high so that the discount, like the 95% off, looks really good versus if it was a $20 course and just cut down to $10.
And I'm curious because you mentioned your recent course that you created around the stock market. So how did you actually get into stock investments?
So this was one of those, like, I've always enjoyed stocks. Like I invested at 19. That's when I started. So it's not like I decided to talk about this topic just because I saw it was popular. It's something I enjoyed talking about anyway. I found myself talking more and more about it behind the camera. At that point, I did see that, hey, like there are a lot of YouTube channels that really thrive when they talk about investing. So I'm going to talk about that too, because I have the knowledge about it. It connects a bit to digital marketing because if you want to learn about digital marketing, like you have a business, you want to grow it, you're thinking about how to make more money and get your money to work for you in a better way. And that's kind of similar to the mentality of investing in assets like stocks. So I originally was going to create a side channel to talk about investing and keep them separate. But I saw that side channel was doing so well. And I had experimented with investing videos on my channel and people loved them. I got a lot of comments, a lot of likes. The thumbnails were very good in terms of click-through rate. So just based on all that data and how the audience was engaging, I realized it made sense to make that jump. I still do digital marketing content from time to time. I like to do one like digital marketing or side hustle related video each week. But a lot of it is now stocks just because I know how the audience engages and the numbers are very good and people really enjoy the videos as well.
That's really cool. So how did you really gain the knowledge around it? Was it that you started investing yourself and learned it along the way?
So I started investing in myself. I mean, you can read books and textbooks, and it's great to do that because you get like the foundation. Like you don't want to just go in blindly having no idea what's a good investment and what's a bad investment. But the best way to learn is really through action. You learn through your mistakes, you learn through your triumphs. That's the best way to learn. If you're a little nervous about investing, I'd recommend just starting with $5, fractional shares or index funds. Really great way to get some exposure and learn some lessons about what happens to that $5 without putting in like $10,000 and losing a little. Like you'd rather play with $5 than $10,000 or use one of those simulators that gives you $1 million in fake money and you decide how to use it. But in any event, all the trial and error, I fell in love with like investing and doing the research. And it was a good fit with shifting to YouTube and talking more about investing because I had come out with some dividend investing videos that people really seemed to enjoy. And the connection from point A to point B really did make a lot of sense. And now that I cover it on YouTube, I'm able to go deeper into the research to just figure out, just based on my criteria, what makes a good company, what makes a bad one.
So for someone who is starting out with investments, so you already mentioned that they should take $5, and play around a little bit and learn from it. What would you advise them to do?
I would at first advise them to look at safer picks just because you want to get an idea of what's safe and what's risky. You want to know pros and cons of all of those. Like I feel like people should start safe very first, just big name companies that offer dividends. Can get into growth companies as you learn more about it. I would pay attention to stocks though. Like even if they're not in your portfolio, I would keep an eye on them, see how they move, see what makes them move. Like sometimes a stock will go up 10% in one day and you'll be like, there was no news on this stock. There was nothing. It was just people rushing to it. So I would just say pay attention, keep consuming the news about certain investments. And if you always keep an eye out and you stay active, it's easier for you to get better over time.
Like you mentioned now that, some stocks go up 10% in a day, right? And then you start Googling things, but you can't find anything about it. So how do you find out what happened?
Maybe you go to Elon Musk's Twitter first. Maybe you see if he sent out a tweet. But sometimes it's just people are really optimistic about past news, or one person talks about it. It could be a whole lot of reasons. Maybe Wall Street Bets is talking about it. But again, there's so many different reasons the stock can go up and down. Sometimes they make sense. The company did good earnings, but other times they can make no sense at all. So that it's just a classic advice you hear very often: never invest in what you don't know. And if you see something shooting up for no apparent reason, it can go the other way very quickly if there's no more reasons for it to go up.
You made some first experiences with that?
I think we all have. We're all chasers at some point. We see something shoot up and we're like, what happened? So I do think it happens to everyone, especially when there's like some panic or correction or anything like that.
Is there like a particularly big loss you experienced in the beginning?
Definitely. There's definitely been, okay. I think one of the ones was for some reason I didn't like load up on this, but I got into some movie pass because people were thinking like that can make some type of good movement because people like the idea of like a Netflix or movie theaters, but the model had a lot of issues with it. So I did lose some money. It was like something close to 50% loss at that time. Like I chased it. I could have gotten out of the game, but I didn't. And you know, those lessons teach you, but I only think I did that with like $400 or something really small like that. So like, it's not something devastating. Like it's not like the loss that I think about for years to come, but it helps you get better. Again, you want to get better with making mistakes with $5 bills than $10,000.
Yeah, I'm curious also, like how long did it take for you until you really saw quite some traction with your YouTube channel and generally your content online?
So traction really goes on and off. Like sometimes you feel like you're gaining so much traction because of initial efforts you're putting in, but then you hit a plateau where you double your views in a month and it stays the same, maybe a little bit of decline over the next few months. So you always have to figure out what's going to be that next thing that I do. And for me, it was increasingly focusing on the YouTube algorithm where I create videos that I enjoy, but I also look at the keywords and I say, is this a stock people actually care about? Is this a topic like that people want to learn about in the case of like option trading or something to that effect? So an increased focus on the algorithm has been very helpful for me lately. But again, now it's like, you know, you've reached this new level. How are you going to get to that next level? How are you going to go beyond? And each time you got to get a little more creative, think of something new. It's easier if you can use something like scaling, where you have a way to gain 10 new email subscribers each day, and you're able to scale that up to 20 just because more people see your content. Algorithm kicks in, so you get a boost there. So if you could have like initiatives that connect with scaling, that helps a lot. But you gain some initial traction in the beginning. What are you going to do to get over the next hump? It's a question you got to keep asking yourself.
So what helped you in these moments, you know, when you had the feeling, oh my God, like, I don't know what to do next. And I'm kind of a little bit out of ideas and I don't know where to get more traction.
The most basic thing about gaining traction, there's a lot of different strategies you could take, but the central thing is going to be growing your email list. That is the one audience you truly have like the most control over in terms of how you can communicate with them. The more people you have on your email list, that's like more people who could see your content immediately. So if you have 1,000 people you promote the video to, maybe you get 100 of them to watch the video right away. If you get up to 10,000 email subscribers, you've got maybe 1,000 people who see the video right away. Or, you know, those numbers that you do should be centered around growing the email list. So I write a lot of articles on Medium. I have a call to action at the end to, you know, subscribe to my newsletter. And YouTube, I've got some call to actions there as well to join the email list. So a lot of the traction, you can get benefits from the YouTube algorithm, which are a little bit random. You have a video, sometimes in my case, you published it months ago, and it's like, wow, YouTube just suddenly decided to choose you to be the star of my channel. But at other times, like the algorithm, it's great when it works, but you shouldn't rely on it. You should be growing your email list on the side because 10,000 people or however many you have, you can always communicate with them. YouTube, like, you know, it's great when one video becomes the star of your channel, but what if it fizzles out after a little bit? Then you're back to where you were with no way to prop yourself up unless you were doing something on the side that didn't rely on the algorithm.
what I also wanted to go into with you, I know that you have a YouTube channel, you have a podcast, you wrote several books and also courses. So which of these mediums is most profitable for you?
I'd say that they've all had different phases. Like the writing has been really good for me. Writing, podcasting, and YouTube in that order. Writing because it allows me to grow the audience. Medium, I also get to make money just directly from the content. I also run ads on my blog, and some of the people who visit my blog, they'll buy my books, and I run Amazon ads for those to boost sales. So writing is definitely a top one. Podcasting, I get some sponsors. I also get a lot of relationship building. So some of the people I build relationships with, some become clients, some become cross promoters. YouTube, I make a lot of money through promoting the courses and the AdSense. But just based on where I am right now with the channel, like a lot of future momentum can build up on the channel just based on what I'm looking at with the numbers. So that could eventually emerge as a number one source. But right now it's blog, podcast, YouTube. And I think for most people, podcasting is the best one to go to, or a YouTube channel where you have to interview people, because relationships are business. Like at the end of the day, it's people talking to people, and podcasting allows you to do that very nicely.
I like that. And I'm curious because, you built like your whole ecosystem, but also when you look back on your journey, were there also certain moments where you were also doubting yourself?
When you're pursuing like any type of goal, I think doubt can be good in some cases because it means you're going after something big. Like if you are setting like a really small goal for yourself, like let's say you have 1,000 YouTube subscribers and your goal by the end of the month is to hit 1,010 subscribers. Like that's not a big leap. I don't think you're going to doubt yourself. But if you say like, I have 1,000 subscribers now, I want 10,000 by the end of the year, that's a bigger jump. And especially if you're at the point where time, staying focused on team, stuff like that, you're not growing at that rate each day to hit 10,000 subscribers. You have to go beyond what you currently know, what you're currently doing to hit that number. So I wouldn't say like be filled with self-doubt, like that's not good either, but it is natural to have a little bit of that if you are pursuing something big. So you should view it as I am pursuing something big. And now instead of me sitting there, like I've acknowledged I'm pursuing something big because there's no doubt when it comes to tiny goals, but now it's like, okay, let me get out of this state. Let me get into a state of what do I have to do to hit the goal? And what are the action items? If you focus on the action items, like the results don't always pan out. Like 1,000 to 10,000 subscribers in a year, a lot of that's algorithm focused. A lot of that is you suddenly figure out a way to grow your email list. Like you can't control that. You can do your best, but you can't control that. Focus on the action items. And that's the best way to get through any doubt. And doubt, again, like people have it because they are pursuing something big.
Okay, that's really great advice. And do you still have a last key takeaway, a personal insight that helped you grow and you would still like to share?
I guess I'm here just theoretically supposed to have to talk about this stuff. So I would say that my big thing, especially when I was a teen, I don't say this much now, but it was a big thing for me when I was a teen. Age is not a limit to success. And I feel like people put so many different limitations on themselves. And that could be part of where the doubt stems from. Like maybe it's a lack of belief in themselves because they are pursuing this big goal and they don't know how to get there, or they're looking at past mistakes and they're willing to say, I want something different for myself. I want this big goal, but they still have some doubt because they're thinking about their past mistakes. So I would suggest take out the limits. Stop beating yourself up, stop putting yourself down, and really challenge yourself to think bigger. Really challenge yourself to not put these limits on yourself, whether it's people thinking they're too young to do stuff, people thinking they're too old to be respected by people, people thinking they need a decade of it. Just stop with it and just go after what you want to go after and don't put any limits on yourself.
And how can people get in touch with you?
So my name, Marc Guberti, you put that marcguberti.com, you search me on YouTube, you search Breakthrough Success. If you guys do want to start a podcast, I have a free 5-day podcast launch mini course. Just go to marcguberti.com/5-day podcast launch, and it will be over there.
Thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge today. And for everyone who's watching or listening, we would love to hear from you. Please make sure to share your insight from today's episode that resonated with you the most. Let us know in the comments below the video.